Welcome to the What to Read Next podcast. In this podcast, your host, Lori Amin, will interview published authors to chat about their work, journey to getting published, and their book recommendations. If you share a passion for books and always looking for your next read, then join us. Welcome to the What to Read Next podcast. Today we have an author interview with Nisha Sharma. Nisha's latest release, Legal Affair, is out today. This is a brown billionaire story, and it is so good. In this interview, Nisha shares her writing process, her latest book, and some awesome book recommendations. Now let's go to the interview. Hi, Nisha. Welcome to the What to Read Next podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So happy to have you here. Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I write young adult romance and adult contemporary romance. My first YA book came out in 2018 called My So-Called Bollywood Life. And I am currently writing a trilogy with Avon called the Singh Family Trilogy. The Takeover Effect was the first installment of the trilogy that came out last year. And the second book, The Legal Affair, comes out on August 18th.
I love it. And I read The Legal Affair and I read The Bollywood. So I'm excited to talk about this with you. So let's talk about what inspired you to become a writer?
So I think I've always kind of loved the concept of romance and love since I was a little kid. It's a lot of influence from Bollywood media, Bollywood movies, where Bollywood movies historically, or, the modern contemporary Bollywood movies have always been about a couple that has been trying to get together, and they get together in the first half of the movie, and then the second half of the movie, some external forces are tearing them apart. That's, the type of Bollywood movies that I grew up on. And I've always loved that story, that type of story. And I also used to read like Nancy Drew and Hardy Boy super mysteries, and I was obsessed with them. I wanted Nancy Drew to leave her boyfriend Ned so badly so she can get together with Frank Hardy, who would support her sleuthing passions. And I was like a hardcore fan. So that is what I grew up on. That's what I loved.
I love it. Have you read some Nancy Drew or Hardy Boys now that you're grown up? Or
So I have read some of the like Nancy Drew mystery stories that they recently published, and then they they did some graphic novel stuff, but I'm really a fan of the classics, and then the super mysteries which were the paperbacks that came out in the 90s. So those are the ones I still love.
I love this. I love going back to our childhood and seeing those books that inspired us, and then years later I'm like, that it got me into reading, it got
evergreen.
me engaged. They're evergreen content, so it's awesome.
Definitely.
So what was your journey to get that first book published?
So I started writing professionally when I was 19. I joined Romance Writers of America at that time. I was taken under the wings of the other authors in the romance writing community. So I felt like I was in a really great place because I was nurtured and I was learning constantly. By the time I was in law school, I had some success with small presses, but I hadn't really found, my breakout quote in quotes, my breakout book. And it wasn't until I had started my MFA at Wilkes University, where I wrote My So-Called Bollywood Life, which was my YA that sold to Random House Children Books.
That's fantastic. So let's talk about writing. And this actually question came up when I interviewed Sarah McLean. She mentions your style. So I'm going to preface for long-time listeners, you may know what Nisha's style is, but Nisha, what's your writing style? Do you follow an outline? Do you see particular lead serial plotter? Are you a pantser?
I am not a pantser. I am a plotter. I am so a plotter. So when I first think of an idea for the book, I sometimes will marinate on it for months. There has been a story that I've sat on for 2 years before I actually started writing. The Singh Family Trilogy actually started with a thought a couple of years ago, before I got to the point where I actually started writing the first chapter of the first book. After thinking about the story for an extended period of time, I will start the research process. So anything in the book that I don't have familiarity with, personal knowledge, I will seek out experts. I'll do interviews, read case studies, read white papers. For my so-called Bollywood life, I actually learned how to splice film.
Oh my God.
Because the heroine splices film in that book. She knows how to splice 35 millimeter film. So I went to my local movie theater and I became really good friends with the manager, and he took me up into the projection room and he showed me, okay, this is like the table that you use, the lighting table that they use. This is how you like look at the film strips. This is how you splice the film. So I actually learned how to do it in order to actually write one paragraph in that entire book. And then, you know, for the Takeover Effect and the Singh Family Trilogy, I am a lawyer, so I have like experience in corporate law, but I didn't have a lot of experience in mergers and acquisitions. So I spoke to a lot of attorneys who are very well-known M&A attorneys. I was very lucky to have access to them. And, you know, I bought them copious amounts of Dunkin' Donuts, and, you know, we drank coffee and we talked about, you know, what could potentially happen in a situation where there's a hostile takeover over a small company. And it was great. So I do all that. I then compile my research and I start with a story arc. I usually like to follow a linear story narrative, and I will draw a graph on very big paper or on a whiteboard, or even, you know, sometimes I even use like PowerPoint or something, and I will start putting plot points on the graph. And so say we're using the hero's journey as a structure, I'll you know, focus on developing those major plot points. Those turning points, and then I will draft very extensive summaries of those turning points. I will then develop an Excel spreadsheet where I put my deadline, and I will plot out 2,000 words a chapter, which is roughly 10 pages. This is how many pages the book has to be. This is how many words the book has to be. This is how many words I have to write per week in order to hit my deadline a month early, because I will always take that extra month for revision. And I will have my Excel spreadsheet. I will have my graph. I will have my summaries. I will develop a beat sheet that is like my cheat sheet. So if I'm like out in the world, which of course no one's out in the world right now, we're in a pandemic, but if I would like write outside the house, I would take my beat sheet with me. I would also put everything into Plotter, which I have access to like on my app, like on my computer and everything. And that way I can, Plotter is an app for those of you who don't know, and it's Plottr. It's an app for your desktop. That the desktop version is way better than the phone. So if anyone is like looking at Plotter, I recommend the desktop app before I recommend the one on the phone. But anyway, I put it in Plotter, and I mean, I can go on. I have a very thorough process, and then I'll build all of those like details into an actual like a print like an actual like calendar. And so like events for the book will often coincide with like real life events. And I color code it because like when I first started doing that and I didn't color code it, like there was, you know, something in my book that was like Bollywood movie night, and I'm like, what Bollywood movie night? I have no idea what's happening. And I realized that like, no, that's a Bollywood movie night that coincides with a date in my book, not in real life. So I like had to start learning how to color code my stuff. And so, you know, that's also something that exists. And yeah, so that's my very extensive, probably a little too detailed process.
I love this process so much. It's like the method to the madness. Like, how do you put it all together and make sense of it? And it's like such a huge feat. Like, you wrote a book, you know.
That's how I do it. But you know what? The thing with process is that everyone can have a different process. The end goal will eventually be the same. Like Sarah McLean, I can tell you, and she's told you already, right?
Yeah.
She's told you that her process is not my process. We have like, I am on one end of the spectrum and she's on the complete other end of the spectrum when it comes to processes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love it. I love asking this question because then I think about when I read the book, like, how does that make sense? Do they plot this or did he just wear my pants first, you know?
Yeah.
So it's awesome. Do you share work along the way or do you wait it's completed for others to read?
Oh, so I do share the work along the way. I share it with my best friend, who will read like early chapters. I will share it with my critique partner. I will talk about it extensively with people that I trust and that, you know, are close to, like, you know, they know what I'm working on. I will talk about it to my agent, and I think that's part of the way that I process what's happening in the book and the way that I develop layers into the story.
I love this. Okay, so let's talk about the Sing Family trilogy. What was the source of inspiration?
So I work in corporate. I work for a very large Fortune 10 company. In my workplace, or Fortune 15 company, in my workplace, you know, we have a team that works with smaller businesses. We have a team that works to invest in smaller businesses. And so I've been, you know, part of the process of connecting with these smaller businesses and the relationships that large businesses have with small businesses and small diverse businesses, companies that are owned and operated by families that, you know, their company represents the immigrant dream. So, you know, and their companies aren't always, you know, small. Their companies like are smaller than a Fortune 15, but, you know, they're pretty freaking successful. And it's amazing how someone who only has like $54 in their pocket can come from India and create an empire. It may not be a Google empire, but it's incredible. It's incredibly impressive. The company that they develop means so much more to them than, you know, like what my job would technically mean to me. It's a source of income. To them, their company is, you know, a symbol of the American dream. It's, you know, the reason why they wake up in the morning and they work as hard as they do. So that was part of the reason why I wanted to write something like this, because I felt like it was really important to write a family saga book where it was connected to a bit like a business, because I feel like we see a lot of, you know, people of color represented in media, but we don't see a lot of them in executive leadership positions having very successful lives. And I really wanted to showcase that. The other thing is, there are so many CEOs in corporate America that are South Asian. And I never read a billionaire book with a South Asian hero. It's like, excuse me, every billionaire romance out there is like a white hero. And yes, there are a lot of white men in corporate America, more than anything else. But there are also a lot of South Asian billionaire, you know, CEOs too. Like, we have Microsoft, we have like Google, we have like, you know, so like I can go on and on and on. The amount of, you know, powerful South Asian men in those kinds of positions, either past or present. And that is why I wanted to include a South Asian CEO, because and who had accumulated that kind of wealth, because it's not out of the realm of possibility. It's a reality right now.
I love this. I love the fact that it was diverse and it was about family and they came together and it was like they're working together. They're trying to figure out, and you still had the family dynamics of the brothers, your disagreements and all those different things. But at the end of the day, they believe in the business. They believe, like, you know, they've created this empire that's sustaining and that's helping not just them, but also all these people that you hire and they work for. So I love that. So this book is set in the world of business, and you mentioned that you had some research about mergers and acquisition. So, and corporate espionage. So what was that research like? So you met with attorneys? Did you meet with business people too?
I did. So I met with the M&A attorney who actually spearheaded the Yahoo merger with Verizon. So that was one attorney I met with. I met with a couple other M&A attorneys that have done major deals that have, a really great reputation. I've also met with the business law professor at Rutgers University. And I sat with him for a very long time, and we chatted back and forth about the different possibilities of, if this X happens, will Y happen in a business setting. So they did a lot of like case studies with me, and that was very helpful. I spoke with a lot of female CEOs as well who own their own businesses in the tech industry. And let me tell you, they are so impressive. I am in love with every single one of them. There's one in particular, I won't say her name or her company, but she does a lot of work with the government. She runs a tech company. She used to be a consultant, and then she just decided to hang up her own shingle. And, we were talking, and she's like, hold on, like, I got to put the baby in the car seat. So she's putting the baby in the car seat. And then like, I hear her turn on her car and the engine revs. I'm like, what are you driving? And she's like, oh, sorry. I'm in my Bentley today. I'm like, okay, sure. She's putting the baby in the backseat of her Bentley and then getting in the car to pick up the other one from daycare. Like, okay. I loved it. And then meanwhile, she's like talking like, on her whatever, like her car speakers talking, and, she's hands-free, and she's, chatting about like balance sheets and getting new clients and like purchasing other companies to grow her global footprint and developing diversity and inclusion initiatives because she is a person of color and she wants to impact the communities that she serves. So, I had amazing conversations with female leaders, and I loved every minute of it. And I think that was one of my favorite parts of working on the legal affair.
I can imagine. I love this. I love the fact that you got inspired and then created a love story for a strong female character who who's basically set her world up in storm, and have some inspiration for those.
Definitely.
So let's talk about Raj. So Raj is, basically she broke free from her family. She went to college, with basically kind of like a dream of just getting out of the family. She didn't want to get an arranged marriage or be pregnant, and so she got married, with an agreement, and then built a business and tried to then finds herself in a place in her life where pretty much everything that was normal is no longer normal. Like she's getting divorced. She's like she's off for a job and all these different things. Why was it important to showcase her character arc, because she grows during this relationship?
Yeah, she does. I think it's really important to for the strong female character to kind of come from a place where she feels like she is a fully sufficient, independent woman, and she remains that way throughout the whole story. But what changes is her views on strength itself. So, she is a strong female independent woman, strong independent woman. She can remain a strong independent woman, but her strength doesn't necessarily mean that she can't, share the burden in a partnership with someone else. And she learns that through the journey of the book. I wrote Raj the way that I did, where she started off in a position where she was going to get a divorce, because I felt compelled to tell a story that normalizes divorce in the South Asian community. Like, it's not a normalized thing. There are a lot of people who still, a lot of people who don't believe that divorce should happen, and I think that in the story itself, I didn't want to position a heroine who was faced with defending her choices. I wanted it to be like, okay, she's getting a divorce, it makes sense, she's getting a divorce. And I didn't want the hero's reaction to her to be to like sexualize her or to question her choices, because it's important to me to show different perspectives of the South Asian narrative.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where kind of Raj is. And the fact that she doesn't want kids is also something that I wanted to put in the story, because that's not just South Asian, that's across the board, where, it's questioned whether or not women have even the right to make the decision on whether or not they should have kids. They're always, questioned about it. And so I wanted that to be in the book as well. Whether or not, Raj decides to have kids later down the line, the fact that she didn't want kids at that moment in the beginning of the book, even at the end of the book, it was respected. And I think that was the key. Her decision was respected. So, that I think that having those different elements to her that stayed constant through the story, but just her feelings towards like, okay, I can be this way, I can have these feelings, and I can still be respected for it, and I can trust that someone else is going to be the reliable partner I need while I continue to grow in my personal journey, and I can be a part of this pair that also is stronger together. I think that was the focus of her character arc.
Yeah, I really loved her character. I think I just loved the fact that she normalized certain things. Like for me, like not wanting to have kids was a very big thing, because I see a lot of romance where it's like, oh, and they have a baby, and it's like, but not everyone wants to have a baby. Like not everyone, and that's their personal choice. So I love that it normalizes certain things that I was just like that I wish they really normal,
Yeah, definitely.
and then at the same time we brought in, a strong female character with a strong alpha hero too. So, and like, how do you actually make a relationship work where they're equal partners, not just one over the other? Or, there was a push and pull, but it was part of the chemistry. Like it worked together. So speaking of the chemistry and speaking of the scene, like what was the process like to write those scenes?
So that's where I was kind of like, okay, this takes time. I have to figure out a way to develop this, because if you have a strong alpha heroine, does that mean you can't have an alpha hero? That is like often the question that people ask themselves, like where what is possible in this situation? If you have two alphas, is it going to work? Because oftentimes it doesn't on the page. It doesn't even in nature. Like you generally don't have it in nature. So could I write two alphas? And in a way, I think that I did. I think that Raj is definitely an alpha, but Ajay is also very, very much an alpha. He is an alpha that is respective. Like he respects Raj. He respects her decisions, but he also does not like take shit from her. He's like, I'm calling you out. I know that you're lying because you're scared, and I'm going to call you out on it, and I'm going to do whatever I can to kind of protect you. But if protecting you doesn't mean stepping in front of you, it means stepping up next to you and standing by your side. That's what I'll do. So it was kind of like, was he more of a cinnamon roll or was he more of an alpha? Cinnamon roll, by the way, is trademarked by Andy Christopher. I'm going to go on record and say it. She's the one who came up with the term. I feel like she doesn't get enough credit for it. So I'm throwing that out there. Author Andy Christopher, she's amazing. Andy J. J. Christopher, I think, are on Instagram. But that is my little plug for Andy. So I don't know if Ajay is a cinnamon roll or an alpha, but I think I got most of the alpha on the page in the book. Like that was my intention, and hopefully I executed it.
You did. I think as someone who's moved away from the alpha hero, I felt like IJ was respectful. Like he had her back. Like he was like I'm rooting for you. Like he wanted a strong female in his life, and it wasn't like a sense of like, I'm better than you are, or I'm gonna complete you. Like it was more like we can come together, we can work together out. So I really appreciate that, in the sense of like, for someone who doesn't love her alpha heroes, this was an alpha hero that I can root for. So what can we expect about book 3?
So in book 3, I haven't really thought about it yet because I've had to, kind of switch to a different swim lane on a different project. But I do want Zale's story with Sahar to be, second chance romance, because you don't really know much about his relationship with Sahar through books 1 and 2. But you know that by the end of book 2, something happens. And so, like, I'm excited to kind of explore their relationship in book 3. I don't think it's a secret that Zale and Sahar are, like...
Well, I was expecting that was going to be book 3. I was like, I feel like it's hinted a couple of times. I was like,
across, like, all of the stuff. It's, like, everywhere. Like, Zale and Sahar is definitely happening. But I just, I don't want to give too much away, but I will say that, like, I'm in the preliminary phases of developing the story, and I'm excited to write it. So we'll see what happens.
I'm excited. So now let's go to a round of book recommendations. This is an opportunity to share with the audience what they should read next. What is your favorite genre?
What my favorite genre? That's a really hard question to answer because I read across genres. I read across, romance genres. I will say I do like a really good paranormal.
Ooh. And so what has been a book you read this past year that you love?
There's been so many. I don't know if I can narrow it down to one.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you a top 5. Can I give you like a top 5?
Yes.
Okay. So You Had Me at Ola just came out. Alexis Daria, freaking phenomenal. So good.
So good.
Adriana Herrera has come out with multiple books. I really loved American Sweethearts, but her book Here to Stay comes out this month. Also phenomenal. Sarah McLean's Daring and the Duke is the last in the Bare Knuckled Bastards series, and it's also just like, talk about like a knockout, and I mean that literally and figuratively. The Devil of Downtown by Joanna Shupe, if you're also into historical, which is amazing.
Yeah.
That is like, I read that book and I was just floored. And then I texted Joanna and I was like, dude, this is unreal. I can keep going. Can I keep going?
Yeah, please.
Harvest of Sighs by Sierra Simone was also ridiculous. A Worthy Opponent was, and Harvest of Sighs and A Worthy Opponent by Katie Robert are both erotic romance. So I recommend those two. If you're looking for the most sweetest, slow burn, amazing contemporary, Love Lettering came out in January of this year. I can't believe it's still this year, but Kate Claiborne's Love Lettering was also really, really solid. It was so good. Blame It on the Billionaire, I think was the title, by Naima Simone. It was part of her Blackout series. Let's just leave it at Sexy Elevator Scene, which is one of my favorites. Also really good. For YA, I read 2 YAs this year. I don't remember if Love Boat Taipei came out this year. I think it came out.
Yes, it did. It's so
Love
good.
Boat Taipei blew my mind, obsessed. And the other one that's coming out on the same day as The Legal Affair by Pintip Dunn is oh god, I have the book, Dating. Oh my god.
Dating.
Wait, I got it. I'm gonna look it up really. Pintip Dunn. I blurbed it. And for some reason I can't even remember. Oh, dating makes perfect. That's what it is. I blurbed the book and I was so excited about this book. I can't even tell you how much like Pintip just like wrote such an incredible story. It's like, oh, it is the romance, the YA romance, the type of YA romance that I find is like just perfect. It has all the right elements in it. It just makes you want to like hold hands and go to the movies and like, you know, kiss in the back row. It's just so good. So that's one. I mean, there are a lot more. I rec books on my blog on nisha-sharma.com. Every month I have like 5 books that I'll mention. So there's like other recs for sure that if you guys want to check it out, you can go there and see it.
I love all your racks. This was amazing. So tell us where we can find you online.
So you can find me online on Instagram and Twitter at Nisha Writes, NISHAWRITES. Same handle for both sites. On my website, nisha-sharma.com. That's where I have like information about events. I have information about, you know, like I have recipes on my blog. You can sign up for my newsletter there. I usually have a giveaway in my newsletter. I have a YouTube channel. I haven't posted a video in a little bit because I've been writing a lot, but it's Nisha Writes Online. So it's Nisha, WRITES online. And that's
I love it. Thank you, Nisha, for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I had such a great time.
If you enjoyed this podcast, feel free to share with friends, subscribe, or rate and review the show. This is the easiest way to support this podcast. Want to join a romance-loving community? Want weekly book recommendations, monthly author Q&As, and book recommendation meetups? Make new friends? Then join our Patreon community. To sign up, please follow the links in the show notes. What to Read Next podcast is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Find more podcasts to love on frolic.media/podcast. Thank you so much for listening and have a great day.